Hey, everybody. How are we feeling today? Today, we're going to be doing hello. We've got folks signing on. So, welcome back. This is still part of the Class Central free web development bootcamp. If you're just coming in off the street, hello, lovely to meet you. We're going to be doing some CSS together. It's going to be super mellow and super chill. If you'd like to join the rest of the class, you can head over to classcentral.com and sign up for free. We've been going for a couple weeks now, so you'll have a little bit of catching up to do. Hey y'all. And if you've been following along, hello. So we're going to be doing the second half of CSS. And do you know what? When I did this yesterday, we went really fast. So we might be able to hustle and then just go chill in a minute. Yeah. What are y'all going to do if you get the time back? So we're going to take away our waiting screen because we're not waiting for anything, but we are going to go ahead and take a look at what we're going to be doing today. So if you recall, if you were here last week, no big deal if you weren't. Oh, and just to go ahead and reiterate, if you joined us yesterday for that stream and you're coming back again today, we're doing the exact same content today. So there's no need to hang out for both of them if you don't want to, unless you really, really want the review. Fabulous. So this is the last one we did. Remember that we talked about padding, the ability to sort of push your elements back and forth and give them a little bit more social distancing. We also talked about margins. And like margins, we're familiar with margins. We know about margins. We've used margins in maybe Microsoft Word or maybe in Google Docs or Office Libra. We've used margins in our documents before, and margins to the sides of elements feel the same. Last week, when we were all hanging out together, we learned about how to set margins. And what we're going to do this time, I'm a little suspicious this is the last one we did. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to learn to set different margins on different levels. Is this the last one we worked at? Add different margins to each side of an element? It'll be fine. This is close enough. So sometimes you want to customize an element so it has a different margin on each side. And I think we did the different padding on each side last week. So different margin on each side is going to feel pretty familiar. Oh, heck. We've already done this. I'm going to reset it. So we're going to give the blue box a margin of 40 pixels. And I think it's probably going to look really, really, I think it's going to look like this, isn't it? Yeah. So, and what we're going to do immediately after this is, if you notice, this is a lot of typing. So we're going to do margin top, then we're going to do margin right, then we're going to do margin bottom, and then we're going to do margin left. What's important about that order? What does that look like? What direction is that? While y'all are telling me what direction that is, yeah, I mean, these blue and yellow boxes are going to hang out for a while, aren't they? So we're going to start with margin top. And here our assignment saying, please make the top element 40 pixels. And we could do that. We specify pixels because we're going to learn in a minute about the other things it could be. How to clockwise, absolutely. It is clockwise. You are after my own heart. We've got multiple people saying, hey, it's clockwise. You know that you're perfectly right. And the reason it's clockwise is so that we don't always have to type all of this out. Margin right. And we say our right should be 20 pixels as well. Margin bottom. This is a lot of typing, isn't it? Our bottom should have 20 again. Semicolons, because we're very, very responsible, aren't we? Then this margin left is the last one. Yeah. And what should the left margin be? That should be 40 pixels again. How confident are we feeling right here? Ooh, I mean, the red and blue look the same, and that's usually what it wants us to do. Let's run all tests and see what everything. Do you know what? I forgot to reset this with the last class. Give me just 1 second. So clockwise notation. Reset. Sorry, sorry, sorry. We don't get to look ahead at the answers. We're terrible. Instead of specifying padding top, padding right, padding bottom, and padding left, we can do them all on one line. So we've had two people say, hey, 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 it's important that it's clockwise. And it is important that it's clockwise. So you can remember what these numbers mean. Here, let's make you a little bit bigger. Hey, here we've got padding, and then we say 10 pixels. You say, well, I mean, what's 10 pixels, Jess? And I said, well, the padding top. We're starting at the top of the clock. And the padding top is going to be 10 pixels. And that's chill. And we say, okay. Then, and this is tough for me because I'm in a video, so I'm reversed. Then we say, okay, well then it's padding right. Oh, good. That's my right in the video. Don't Beryl, you can ask any questions you want. It's super chill. That's the whole point of these. Yeah. Oh, so this is a really good question. So yeah, in week lesson 3, I encouraged you to think of the style block. Think of it as a conceptually separate file because almost always when you're writing when you're making websites in the real world, they will be separate files. But you can indeed use the style blocks in real life. So you can put them into the head of your HTML instead of or in addition to creating a CSS file. The question is, when do we use a style block or can we use a style block in real life? And yeah, you can. You can put that in the head of your HTML, just like you said right here. Or you can put your CSS in a separate file. So I'd say most of the time in the real world, making a website for a client or for your boss, you're probably going to have a separate file for your CSS. But style blocks are possible. If it's you making your own website, it's really about what you like best. I like to keep them in separate files just to sort of keep myself focused. I know that this answer doesn't sound really satisfying, but the more you play with this, the more you're like, oh, these are separate files here. Oh, I've put the style block in my HTML file. Just feeling these out. And I know I say this all the time, but it'll make more sense with time. And when, not magic, time's not magic, but like the more you try these, the more it'll make sense. I'm sorry if that's not terribly satisfying. Hmm. Is there a standard value already set to these properties that we don't specify? Oh, that's a really good question. So, what is the standard padding of an element? And do you know what? I don't actually have that in my brain. Fabio, do you know what we do when people ask good questions is we punish them with small tasks. Fabio, if it's not a bother, can you try and think of what you might search for to get these answers? So say, hey, what's the default padding between HTML elements? Can you go ahead and have a little bit of a look around? Not necessarily right now, but maybe later. Right. See, that's what happens when you ask a good question. Sometimes I'll look it up and sometimes I'll say, oh, that's a good question. Could you look it up? That's what you get. This is why you shouldn't have a mean teacher. We're going to use the clockwise notation to give the blue box class a padding of 40 on the top and left, but only 20 on the bottom and right. We can do that. So we're going to come in and say, we're going to find the blue box class, and we're going to say, we're going to use this clockwise notation. And if you have to like point or think about it, I always have to say like, oh, top. And I consistently, I'm rubbish. So we're going to make the top of this have 40 pixels. Oh, no, no comma, no comma, no comma. And then the left-hand side should have, wait, so top, and then it's right next. So the right will have 20 pixels. Then the bottom will have 20 pixels. And the left will have 40 pixels. How exhausting. I am not confident about this at all. Oh, but it's fine. Everything's fine. Oh, so Key's pointing out a really good point around the question we got asked saying, hey, when do I put my CSS in a separate file and when do I put in these style tags? It's a little bit more human readable to keep them in separate files. Like people often find it a little bit more comfortable, but it's really about what's going to suit you best. And I'm so sorry that again, this just feels so weird when you start, doesn't it? So we're going to use the clockwise notation to specify the margin of an element. And we're going to reset it because I'm the worst teacher in the world. Do you know what? As the worst teacher in the world, I'm going to reset all of these. So we're going to come back to clockwise notation and give me just a second. Oh, where's my profile? Give me just a second to, oh, where's my settings? Be super mean. And where's the danger zone on this? I'm going to reset all of this. Wait. You all, y'all, don't do this. You should never do this. Look what I've done. Look how much joy I have just removed from the world. Look at that. It's just all gone. But that's because we are coming right back to this one. There we go. Sorry to keep you on the line while I'm resetting. I confess I got a flu shot earlier today, so I'm even more wobbly and gently useless than I usually am, which is actually pretty wobbly, isn't it? But we're going to use clockwise notation to specify the margin of an element, just like we just did with padding. But instead of saying padding, colon, and then our values, we're just going to say margin, colon, and then our values. It's going to be clockwise again. It's going to feel super chill. Everything is going to be super chill. So what we're going to do together is we're going to use the clockwise notation to give the elements in our blue box class. All right, let's find blue box. Got a box. We'll make this a little bigger again. Ooh, a little bit of a jump. I've got a yellow box. I've got a red. There's my blue box. This is going to feel exactly like what we just did. It's going to feel so chill. And you know what the best part of this feeling chill is? It's going to leave you completely unprepared for the real world where you constantly have to go, wait. Is that the top? Yeah. I consistently have to talk myself through the face of a clock as I write these. But there's a good chance that you are far more clever than I am and won't consistently be thrown by the clockwise notation. But let's do it real slow together because I'm a little rubbish. So we start at the top, and the top, they've asked us to have 40 pixels. Oh, yeah, what can we have that isn't a pixel? I say, we'll do it in a second. I'll show you what else we've got. Oh, never worry about showing up late. That's the whole point of doing these on the internet. Everything's chill. So we've got our top of 40 pixels. And what do? We do the top and then we do right, isn't it? Yeah. And then we've said, hey, we only want 20 on the right side. Okay. And it says, well, on the bottom, we go top, right, bottom, because we're on a clock. Right, you do the hand. And do you want to know what the worst thing is? With you, I'm complaining. Um, I'm I'm reversed because I am, well, the way you see me is reversed because I'm on a video. So I'm having to do the clock thing backwards, and it's absolutely going to destroy what's left in my brain. So wait. Top, right, bottom. Bottom is next. 20 pixel on the bottom. Then we think it's 40 pixels on the left. So usually when we do this, the red one and the blue one are the same size, right? Like they're in the same size and they're in the same shape. And this is not what we got this time, is it? Oh, and we need our semicolon as well because we're responsible. Let's run the. I'm not immensely confident, but ah, everything's fine. Everything's going to continue to, and even if it's not fine, it's just some computer stuff. Oh gosh, I messed up some CSS. That's not the end of the world. So I'm really excited about this because we're going to talk some more about battles and like, oh, who would win if this thing fought that thing? So we want to talk about attribute selectors. Yeah. So this is going to feel a little weird because we've talked about a bunch of different types of ways to select CSS. Can anybody remember the ways you can select something in CSS so far? We can use a selector for an element level selector. Yeah. We can create a class. That's pretty chill. Yeah. Oh, and we can create an ID, so a name tag that only applies to our one unique element that we want to do. But we're going to do something weird with this. Yeah? Yeah? We're going to come all the way down. So we're going to use the attribute equals value attribute selector. And you say, Jess, come on, what's even an attribute? I say, be cool. It's cool. We'll talk about it. So here, we're going to be talking about the attribute type. And if you remember, I'm going to take you way down this HTML file. It's going to feel a little bit dizzying. We're going to go all the way to the bottom to where we've got this form. Yeah? Oh, chill. Here, we've got a lot going on. We've got a form element that's like the parent element that has all these other elements in it. But here, I've got an input element. And that's the element. If I was saying, "Oh, what are the attributes of this input element?" I say, "Oh, yeah, I know what these are. Here, type is an attribute of this input element, and the type attribute is set to radio. That's super chill. Name is another attribute of this input element, and indoor outdoor is the value of this name attribute. And checked, yeah, checked is an attribute, and that suits itself. You don't have to do anything besides say check. Yeah. Kuya saying, hey, it's confusing trying to remember the clock. Um, oh, is there, if you've got an alternative, I'd love to hear about it, but I really don't have one aside from me quietly talking to myself. So what we're going to do is we're going to set a selector that impacts only the radio value for the type attributes. So here we're not setting a CSS for all of the inputs. We're saying, oh, you know what? We just want to set it for ones that have the type attribute set to the value of radio. That feels weird, right? Because we're going to learn a whole new syntax as well. I'm going to take you all the way up to the top again. It's going to feel dizzying all the way up. Whoop. And here we've got the stuff we've already learned. Here's our red text class. It's got a full stop. We're cool with that. Here's our H2 selector. It sets the font of all of the H2s. Here's our paragraph selector. It sets the font size and family of all of our paragraph elements. And here we've got some more classes. But we're going to do this a new way. We're going to say, let's get some square braces because we think we've used all of the other braces so far, and square braces would be cool. And we're going to say, hey, we want to set everything that has the attribute type. So whenever you see the attribute type and the value of that is set to radio, then I want you to apply these rules. Where I say, okay, hey, have a look through this HTML. And anytime you see an element that carries the attribute of type, and that attribute of type is set to radio, go ahead and set the margin on, so 20 pixels. Which one? It's up, isn't it? It's the top first. And then we're going to set height to 0 pixels. And then it's bottom next to 20 pixels. And you see, every time we finish this, it gives it a little jump. And then we've got 0 pixels to the left. Yeah. And if you notice, we're seeing the the radio boxes jump around, but the check boxes aren't moving anymore. I'm going to come all the way down. This is going to be dizzying. This is going to be the worst. I'm a monster. And this is exciting because the check boxes we have here, loving, lazy, energetic, they also have the attribute of type. So when we come here and say, hey, CSS, whenever you see the attribute of type, if we just said, oh, I see the attribute of type, shall I apply these rules? And you say, slow down, CSS. Whenever you see the attribute of type and it's set to radio, CSS will come and say, well, I see the attribute of type. Maybe we get to apply some rules. Oh, here, the attribute of type is set to checkbox. These rules don't apply to y'all. Everything's chill. So I've just copied this, which is absolutely wrong. What it actually wants us to do is set a top margin of 10 pixels. So we remember that the first one is the top, and a bottom margin of 15. So the top, right, bottom. Oh, heck. I'm gently confident that this might work. What have I done wrong? The type selected. I did this backwards, didn't I? Here it says, hey, use the type attribute selector to set the check boxes to have these margins. And I say, yeah. The example says type radio. Of course, I'll just rush on and say type radio. Let's get rid of that. And I bet we'll see the formatting come back. And I think once I say check box, we'll see that spacing come back, but applied to the, y'all know, y'all, see, this is why we should get you a real teacher instead of just a goofball who's very, very calm. Yeah, we're just going to keep going and everything's going to say super chill. So a minute ago, I was saying, ooh, we're using pixels. Ooh, we're using pixels. To, in a very goofy way, preview that we're about to not be using pixels. So pixels are a relative size, right? Pixels, they're itty bitty, but they're like an inch or a millimeter or, yeah, pixels are just a set measurement every single time. But we're going to be using a relative unit now called M. And M is equal to the height, the size of the font you're using. You say, but the font I'm using is going to change all the time. It's like, yeah, that's the point. It's a relative measurement, so it's always going to change. And you say, well, I want to use a relative measurement, but I don't want it to be way bigger than the font. Okay, you can use a quarter, like 0.25 of an M. Make it a quarter of the size. You go 0.5 M, so half the size of your font. You can go ahead and make it nice and little and chill. And we're going to learn a lot more about relative unit options when we move on to the next section. Oh gosh, when we move on, what is the difference between M and rem? Yeah, you can hear me like duck, duck, go in this in the background. M, wow. Hmm. Let me drop this in here, as I've got a Stack Overflow. M's are relative to their parents' font size, and rems are relative to the base font size. Okay, so so the big difference is whether. See, this is why I make y'all look stuff up. So it looks like, there we go. It looks like the answer is that M's are relative to the parent's font size and rems are relative to the base font size. Cool. child elements within M's are going to be affected by inheritance, whereas it looks like REMs may not. Do you know what? I've always just assumed that they were mostly the same thing, but they're mostly the same thing with very different rules. Thank you very much. And next time I'm going to make y'all look it up yourselves. Just be mean. Ooh. So when you add an attribute to the CSS selector, can you add it inside of different selectors to follow certain hierarchies? Yeah. So we've talked about that a little bit before, and we're going to come back and talk about that a little bit more again. So remember that when we have different rules that both apply to the same element, that whenever there's a conflict, whenever two of them disagree, that there's going to be a little bit of a battle, and that not all of the ways to set rules are equal. So remember that the more general selectors, I'm going to set, do you know what? Let's learn about that in just a second. I promise we're going to be focusing on that. It'll be weird. We're going to talk about inheritance. Y'all are going to hate it. You're going to be so mad at me. I'm so excited. I'm just an absolute monster. But for now, I promise it'll make sense in a second, or it'll be worse in a second. Right now, we're going to come in and say, hey, oh, heck. Add a padding property to the element with a red. So here's a question: is either M or rem the best practice? It's so that add M or rem. Um, if you want a relative unit, Um, I usually use M. I'm not sure if there are best practices associated with them. I think M is going to be my understanding from that very cursory web search is that M is going to be more impacted by inheritance. And we're going to be learning about inheritance in literally a second. Hold on. Ah, hold on. We're going to come to the red box. Look at all of the mercy here that has been seen in making these very human readable classes. We've got a red box, yeah? Oh, wait, no. This is why you don't do anything after you get a flu shot. You just set the padding to 1.5. And you say, well, it's set at 1.5. And it's a CSS. By default, you've given me pixels and I want M. That. Look at that. Right? I've got 1.5 times the size of this font. That is, add a semicolon because we're responsible. That is weird and rad, right? Like it gets you a lot more space and a lot more bang for your sort of padding buck. So, I promised you I was going to talk to you about CSS inheritance, and I'm going to talk to you about CSS inheritance. And as talking to you about CSS inheritance, I want to talk to you about lying and abstraction first. And I know I've done this a lot where I say, hey, let's talk about lies and let's talk about abstraction. And of course, abstraction is also a concept in computer science. And it's a bit more advanced. We're not talking about computer science abstraction yet. What I want to talk to you about is abstraction in learning. And I think we've talked about this before, but I like to talk about it. And I think one of the most difficult things in teaching is that sometimes you want to be able to say, oh, hey, we're going to focus on this right now. Here's a concept that will come up later, but it's difficult and confusing. So, right now, we're going to artificially remove that. So, I think one of the hardest things in teaching is when you abstract something away, when you remove it to teach, and when you come back and say, hey, I abstracted this away. I lied a little bit. I didn't show you what was going on. And now I want to come back and show you what's going on. And here, and I think Free Code Camp does a very, very good job with this. Free Code Camp has abstracted away some of the really fundamental structuring of what an HTML file looks like. I'm just going to search for Yeah. Hmm. Give me just a second. I am looking for an example, and I'm not quite finding it. Come on then. Haha. There we are. That's what I'm looking for. You all have been waiting so patiently. Absolutely ridiculous for me to make you wait. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my whole screen here just so we've got a little bit more flexibility. So I'm going to tab around and show you a bunch of different things. So, let's make that bigger. Y'all see okay? I want to talk to you about what we lied about before. And I want to talk to you about what's actually happening in an HTML file. We lied through abstraction. We didn't lie to hurt you. But these are the things that you have in your HTML file that we haven't talked about yet. So whenever you start a brand new HTML file, and you don't have to do this in Free Code Camp. Free Code Camp abstracts all of this away so that you can just start writing HTML and just start writing CSS right away. So I want to preview these for you. So for when you're building in the real world, so you know what they look like, but also so we can kind of understand a little bit more about what's going on here. You say, well, oh, you know what? Let me give you this link as well. I'm rubbish. So whenever you start a new HTML file, one of the things you do is you sort of add this magic spell at the top. You say, hey, here's my little curly bracket. I want an exclamation point. And I want to tell you, browser, I'm giving you a document. The doc type is HTML. Yeah? Yeah. Some of this we did talk about. And the things I really want to look at here are that we've got this top level element, that you've got an HTML element and then an closing tag for your HTML element. And then everything that exists in your website is within this HTML element. And then, so we've got a head element as well. And the head has things like, what kind of characters are you set to? What's the title of your page? And if you're using a separate CSS file, this is where you'll link to your CSS or where you'll link to your font, like we learned last lesson. But we're also going to learn about body. And body is something that's going to exist on every HTML file you write. And we already learned about main. Your main tags would come inside these body tags. And then everything else all the main information would come in there. That feels weird. You say, well, Jess, why are you jumping back and forth? And why are you telling me this foolishness? I wanted to tell you about this because we're going to be setting some rules for the body element. And I wanted you to sort of conceptually see where you say, oh, I'm going to set some rules for the body element. And you say, Jess, there's no body element. And I was like, oh, we've abstracted it away. Like, what? What? So I wanted to take a quick look and say, hey, here is a bunch of things that we would have on our website that have been abstracted away. We can't really see them yet. So the body, is going to be everything that's visible on your website. And we're going to learn a little bit about inheritance. And this is going to be, who just asked me this really good question? Where did you go? Jonathan, you were saying when you add an attribute to the selector, can you add it to? So inheritance, I think, might answer a lot of your questions. And excitingly, it's going to make you, well, not just you, I'm not just picking on you, my lovely. It's going to make all of us very, very unhappy at many times when we use CSS because it gets weird fast. Here, I'm going to say, hey, I want to set some rules for the body element, this big element on my web page that I can't really see. It's sort of a big container. It's my biggest rectangle. The background color here, I'm gonna make that black. Oh, everything went black. Everything went black because we said this big overarching element to black. All right. You say, okay, Jess, I believe you now that there's a body element. You've turned it black, so everything's black. Now what? I say, well, let's see what happens when we do some other weird things. And some of the concepts we're going to be touching on a lot during this are the idea of parent, so the outside, the element that contains someone else, and the child, the element that exists within the parent. Yeah, it'll make more sense in a second. So, we've proven that every HTML element has a body. Well, I mean, you believe me. We're going to create an H1 element here. And this is going to say hello world. You say, Jess, I can't see it. And I said, well, I know you can't see it. The default color is black. And that's not really going to work, is it? But we're going to we're going to turn all of the elements on our page that can be turned green by coming to this parent element way up in the hierarchy, way in the boss levels. We're going to say, the body, this big parental element, I'm going to say, hey, whenever you see something you can turn a color, please turn it green. And I think as soon as I say N, we're going to see hello world show up. You say, that's weird. We didn't say anything about H1. We didn't say anything about text. We didn't say anything about hello world. We just changed the body. I said, yeah. So what's happened is this H1 element exists inside our body element. So because it's the child of our body, it's been passed down. It's inherited this green color. Yeah, weird, right? It's going to feel even weirder. So we can do other stuff as well. We say, well, anything in our body, anything that belongs to the body, any children of the body, I also want them to have the font family of monospace. And that changes. We just saw this turn green, so this getting the monospace font doesn't feel that weird. Let's go ahead and continue to see what happens as things get inherited from the body and what happens when more specific rules crash into it. And as a very general rule in CSS, the more specific a rule is, or the more specific a selector is, the more powerful it tends to be. You say, what? It's cool. It's cool. We got it. We're going to keep going. Yeah. So sometimes this is just like Jonathan was saying, like, hey, how we can we add more than one? What happens when they crash? And here it's saying, hey, sometimes your HTML elements will get told more than one rule and they'll conflict, they'll crash. And here the example is our H1 element can't be green and pink at the same time. I mean, you could make them alternating colors, but that would be exhausting. What happens when we set a class that makes the text pink? And while I'm writing this, I want you to tell me what you think will happen. I've already given you a hint that the more specific a selector in CSS is, the more powerful it tends to be. So here, we've got a selector for the body. What happens if I make a class and then set H1 to that class? So the body selector is going to be telling this H1, you must be green. And this class we're making now is going to be saying, no, you must be pink. Who's going to win between a selector and a class? How to make them alternate? So you can, with some fiddly CSS. I'm so sorry, I'm not going to show you right now. I'll try it. Bother me. No, oh gosh, that's not right. You're never bothering me. Fuss at me. There we are. Fuss at me on the forum and we'll figure it out together. Yeah. But who is going to win I'm a club called Pink Text. And this is not a rhetorical question. Who do we think? We've got a body, so a rule in body, and then a rule in this pink club. Who do you think is going to win? Color here is going to be pink. Yeah. And nothing happened because we all we did is we made a club called Pink Text and we said members of this club need to be pink. But we haven't put anybody in this club. And we remember that the way we put somebody in a club is we set the class attribute to the name of that club. Whoa. You got me almost about to put that T. So some folks are saying, hey, we think that this is going to overwrite what happened in the body. We've got someone asking, hey, can you save this class to watch later? Absolutely lovely. So this will continue to be up on Twitch if you're watching on Twitch, or there's it's up on YouTube and it'll always be up on. Yeah. Thank you. I've got a beautiful assistant who's helping me out, who's just on top of it. So as soon as I add that T, it becomes pink. Yeah. Perfect. Oh, you've also, if we set an H1 body selector, perfect. You're absolutely right. And this feels weird, doesn't it? And always remember that the more specific something is, the more powerful it tends to be. So this body, if you also set a selector that said H1, actually let's try this. Let's get rid of that. If we set a H1 selector, so well, all the colors, my H1s are blue. Here we've said, oh, but what happens if we move that around? Sometimes the order matters. So here we've set a very general rule to say, hey, body and everything that's a child with body should be green. And here I'm a little more specific, aren't I? I say, if you see an H1, make it blue. But here I'm saying, if you see anyone in the pink text club, they want pink. So as a very general rule, the more specific it is, the more likely it is to win. So selectors are beaten by classes. Classes are beaten by IDs. IDs are, in a minute, we'll see what beats an ID. And there's two different ways to beat an ID. Yeah. I know this is super weird, isn't it? So we're going to continue to override this. And think about overriding as like a judge with a gavel where like, no, this other person gets to speak, or this other person here gets to choose the color. We're going to create an additional CSS class called blue text. So, what happens when two classes fight? We've already learned that the more specific something is, the more likely it is to win. But what if they're both on the same level? Ooh, do you know what? I think we've got a hint about what's going to be important here. It says, make sure that when you declare, make sure when you create your blue text class, that it's beneath the pink text class declaration. So this feels like a little bit of a hint that maybe the order is going to matter here. What do you think is going to happen when I do this? I'll read from the top to the bottom. That's really, really good. Fantastic. So we've got blue text. We think the color of that is going to be blue. And then we're going to come down and we're going to add blue text. Do you remember how we set more than one class? We just need a space. What? And I like to think of CSS as a babysitter or a teacher. Yeah. So always go with the last thing they said. If you've got a babysitter who says you can't watch any horror movies, no horror movies is the rule. But then you ask again and again and again and again, and they say, fine. Later, 2 hours later, they say, fine, you can watch a horror movie. Oh, the last thing they said is the rule that works. And that's sort of the same deal here. So if you set two rules that are the same weight, they're the same ranking, the more recent one you set is going to be the one that wins. What's really interesting, we're going to control X, get rid of that, it's pink again. It depends on, the order depends on when you set it, not when you apply it. So we can put pink text first or blue text first. Beautiful, Jonathan. Yeah, it cascades, CSS cascades and flows down. The last one, the last decision you made, if they're equal weight, that's the one we're going to go with. Super chill, reliably chill, end of the world chill. We're going to come all the way down. And here it says, check it out. It does not matter which order the classes are listed in the HTML element. The only thing we care about is the class declarations within your CSS, which order that is. We're going to run these tests and we're going to learn more about CSS fighting styles. Okay, so we learned the more specific you are, the more powerful you are. And we also remember that an ID that you set for your HTML elements should be unique. There should only ever be one, right? Yeah. So if there's only one ID, that's really specific, right? So how powerful? So we think an ID versus a class. Who's going to win? Yeah. So we're going to give our H1 element an ID that is equal to, oh heck, it's not equal to, oh heck, it's orange text. Yeah, this ID is equal to orange text. And we're going to come right down here. And if we remember, we start with a pound or a hash. Very old, a pound sign, elderly. We start with a hash and then the name of the ID. How we set a rule for an ID. We say, well, you've got your money on the ID. You think the ID is going to win this fight. All right, let's check it out. So we think the ID is going to win this fight. And here, I think what we're going to do is we're going to make the color. We're going to make the color orange. Who was it who said that orange was going to win this fight? The ID was going to win this fight. It was Catherine, wasn't it? Catherine, you continue to be reliably, absolutely correct. You know what you're going to win? You're going to win on me making you teach this class someday. That's not a real prize. Fabulous. So we've learned that more general selectors, like rules you inherit via selectors, are sort of the least powerful. And then you have a more specific selector, like an element selector. That's more powerful. Then you've got a class, and that's even more powerful. And then you come up to an ID, and that's even more powerful. What can kick an ID's butt? Let's go ahead and see what can kick an ID's butt. Inline styles. Oh, cool. So someone's asking what would happen if we put the orange text on top. So that wouldn't actually matter. We can go ahead and, so here we see that this has moved our text around. So, hey, we've put our orange text above our classes. Doesn't change a thing. Fabio's suggesting that someone else is my teacher's favorite. You are all my favorites. We're going to use inline styles. And the very first CSS lesson we did was inline CSS. And you say, oh no, I forgot what inline is. And I say, it's chill. It's super chill. Inline CSS is where you put just a little bit of the CSS rules in the line with your HTML element We can do that. That's super chill. And it looks like this. Hey, my loves, can you hear me okay? Hmm. So, sorry about that. I think I just had a little bit of a technical hiccup. Everything's fine. Everything's going to be fine. So, inline CSS is a little tiny bit of CSS that you put in your HTML element. You say, hey, style. It's like a little baby style tag. It's a style attribute. You say, and then you set the rule right there in line. Inline CSS is like a very tiny bit of perfect CSS that you put directly in. You write it just for that element. That sounds so wonderfully specific, isn't it? What do you think it'll do? Oh, so here it's saying to make an inline style that's white. Let's look at our format here. So we want to come in, and it doesn't matter where we put this. We can put it in front of the ID, we can put it behind the class. And here we're saying, hey, go ahead and set the style. Ooh, so why did the H1 win over class? So the H1 didn't. Oh, what? Why does this H1 win over class? Because it's an. Ooh, it's a spoiler, isn't it? We think we're going to win because this is in line. So the hierarchy is um, selector, class is more powerful than a selector. ID is more powerful than a class, and then inline is more powerful than ID. So this is powerful because it's inside the HTML. So inline is just magically zipped all the way to the top. Here we're going to say, hey, could you do me a favor? And please make the color white. And yeah, we see that inline wins. Oh. So Kuya's absolutely right. You know what? Kuya's saying, hey, I think when you look at the ways to set all of this, inline wins. Inline absolutely does win unless we yell. We're going to learn about how to yell in CSS. Are we excited? I love Mad Store after my own heart. Important is like yelling. So when something is important, it is I'm not actually going to yell. It is quite important, isn't it? So, and this gets to be important. Important is important. That's rubbish, isn't it? This can be especially valuable. You're not still saying important when you're using someone else's CSS file. So maybe somebody else has written some CSS in your project, or maybe you're using a library that has a lot of CSS that's pre-written, and it's giving you a bunch of rules, and you say, I don't want to use all of these. This is making my background purple, and I don't want to go through and untangle the CSS file and find out why it's purple. I just want to yell and make my background white. Important is when you yell. So we're going to come back to our pink text class. And if you remember, pink text was the third one, the second one we did. And it won. It won against the inheritance from the body tag, and then it got overruled and overruled again. But do you know what? Deep in my heart, I still want the pink text class to win. Yeah. So we're gonna cheat, and we're gonna come in and add important right after this. And all we're gonna do is add this exclamation point. We're like, hey, whenever you see an exclamation point, I like to think of it as telling your browser, hey. And I say, what's gonna happen when I write this T? What's going to happen when I yell at my browser that my pink text class, my pink text club is important? Yeah. Important is cheating. Important is yelling. Important is saying, it's actually important that this be pink or that these rules be followed. This is the way we're going to do things. Fabio, no, no, no. I mean, that is a loving, despairing no. That, yep. So we've got somebody suggesting, hey, you know what? Using a bunch of inline styles and important are gonna make your CSS, you're gonna make your HTML really messy. So on a real project, especially on a work project or an open source project, when you've got a bunch of conflicting CSS rules, what I want you to do is to go in and unpick those and delete the redundant code and make it work. But knowing that inline will overrule other stuff is important to know as a concept. And knowing that important exists as a concept is also really important. So, in a perfect world, when your CSS is a mess and you don't know why something isn't pink, go through and clean up your CSS. I'm going to ask you all to lie to me and say, I'm not going to just use important all the time. Important, yep, important is just for the one declaration you attach it to. It's only going to work on the one that you put it on. You can use it on you shouldn't. Of course, you shouldn't make a bunch of different things important, but no one's going to stop you. I mean, I'll stop you if I'm in the room with you. I'll just be like, babes, no, stop. I mean, maybe your boss will stop you, but I want to move ahead for a second because I want to talk to you all about witchcraft or hexing. I want to talk to you about the ability to do millions and millions of different colors. So far, we've been doing stuff like, oh, hey, green or blue or black. We've been using the human readable number. We've been using the human readable color, the word, and that's rad. But what if we could make this weirder and more complicated? Wouldn't you be really excited if we had many, many more colors to choose from, but if they were weirder and more complicated? That would be great, right? Do y'all want to get weird and complicated? We're going to use decimals, and that means a single character, a single digit. But we need 16 numbers. And if we're only using one character, we've only got 1 to 9. Or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's how we're going to count in hexadecimal. And you know what? Nobody's going to like this. This is bad. This is bad. This is bad. So 0. Wait. 0. Wait. I'm backwards. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A, B, C, D, E, F. Mwahahaha. So 0 is the smallest conceptual number, and it means 0. And F is our largest number in the system, and it means 16. But it's not important that it's 16. What is important is 0 is give me nothing. And F is give me the maximum. This is still weird. Stick with me. I want to break this up. So hexadecimal is a 6-digit code. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, wait, heck. Oh. There we go. Cool. So we've got... Is that easier to see? So a hexadecimal code has 6 digits that run from 0 to F. Weird, right? And to make it weirder, these digits represent different things in pairs. So the first two of these, the first two numbers, are how much red you're asking for. The second two numbers are how much green you're asking for. And the last two are how much blue you're asking for. And you say, hey, Jess, that what? No. What? No. Let's do a couple. And let's go ahead. Let's keep this. Let's cheat. Let's take this with us. We're gonna take this with us into the next couple of things. So here we want to set the background to black. We still want the background to be black, but we want to set it to the least color possible. And we're going to do this in hexadecimal. And whenever we want to specify hex code, we use the pound. Yeah? Because we say, well, it's not like the word. We need you to know this isn't a word that's coming. Here's a hex. So if I wanted to set this to the color black, I said, please don't give me any red. These first two digits are how much red I'm ordering. And then I say, we know black. It's like the absence of any color. Please don't give me any green either. I don't need any green to make this. And you know what? I want the absolute absence of color here. Please don't give me any blue either. And it's going to feel a little redundant for those of you who already sort of get this conceptually, but that's how we're going to talk about these hex codes as we come to them and say, please, may I have all of the red or a little bit of red? Because I find that helps this stick a little bit. Let's go on. So we're going to turn these into hex codes. So the first one, let's go ahead and let's go ahead and keep in mind that this up at the top are what our codes stand for. So the first two are going to be how much red. The second two are going to be how much green. And the last two are going to be how much blue. So let's do this together. Yeah. So Fabio is pointing out, oh, hey, black is the absence of color. I mean, kind of. If one thing that's going to be really distressing as we finish this up and as we move into the visual design is that color theory in computers is different than the color theory we got taught as little kids in school. So we go, oh, the colors were because when you're a kid and you get paint all over you, it's red and yellow and blue. These are the colors that make up all the other colors. And you're a kid and you're like, yeah, I believe it. And now as an adult, you're like, well, we're going to be working with computers and you can make any color you want, but the colors you're going to be working with are red, green, and blue. You say, well, not yellow? I say, no, for mysterious reasons. So, yeah, I want maximum red. And I know that the biggest digit I can ask for is an F. I think to set this to red, I want all of the red and all of the red again. And you know what? The next two digits in this code, in this 6-digit code, are green. And if I'm making this text red, I don't think I need any green. Ooh, that's gone away. How exciting. And you know what? I think if the last two are blue, I don't need any blue. Oh, perfect. Oh, Kai is just going well out of their way to give us important things. Swati, you're absolutely right. Thank you so much. How is this going to work this time then? So say, yeah. Last time I asked for all of the red, but this is green. I don't want you to give me any red at all for these first two. It is green. I want you to give me maximum green, double Fs. And then, it's already turned blue, but I don't want any blue. Yeah. Oh, Linda, it's so fine to be here yesterday and today. I only tell people to come to one or the other because I don't want to waste your time. Everything's chill. I'm going to come all the way down because we're being asked to make this Dodgers blue. And I don't really watch a lot of America. I confess I don't know. So for blue, it's saying, hey, let's get rid of this. The hash for our hash code. I say, well, give me a little bit of blue and then actually quite a moderate amount of blue. Oh, red, sorry. Give me a tiny bit of red and then some more. And then 90. Give me 90 green. And then give me all of the blue you have. A Dodger blue is sort of a very, very beautiful, but sort of butterfly blue, isn't it? And orange is weird. Orange, I'm saying, please give me all of your red. Yeah, all the red. And I said, well, give me quite a bit. An A is still quite a lot. And then a 5. And then, you know what? I'm making orange. I don't think I need any blue at all for this orange. Weird, right? It's just weird. Let's go ahead and do this a little bit more. Let's feel out some more weirdness. Hex codes are a lot, right? And they're weird, they're conceptually weird, and they're 6 numbers. 6 numbers is a lot. There's a short version of hex codes, and you might notice that when we did the ones before, you saw the color jump after I did the first 3. And that's because if you only give your HTML 3 digits in a code, ooh, we're going to be doing the decimal version in a second as well. If you only give it 3, it'll give you a less specific but still very useful hex code. So if you don't need all of the 16 million colors, you can just say use 3. And here, let's go ahead and show you what the shortened one stands for. So if we use a 6-digit hex code, the first 2 are red, and then the second 2 are green, and the last tone are blue. But if we're cutting that in half, we're just doing a 3-digit hex code. The first one's red, the second one's green, and the third one's blue. I can work with that. So if we're doing a 3-digit hex code, what would red be? Yeah. Can somebody tell me what the code for red is going to be? Yeah. And while you all give me the answer because I'm lazy, I'm going to answer this really good question from Sharina. And Sharina's saying, "Hey, if I want to set all the can I use an H1 selector and then I just want a couple of them to have a specific style? Can we then use a class to override just those specific H1 elements?" Absolutely. And that's absolutely how I might do that. So either do that with a class to override the ones you want to look different, or maybe even with an ID. Inline isn't the best practice, but you could do that as well. That's absolutely why this sort of flexibility exists. Linda, look at you. Perfect answer after my own heart. Oh, heck. Sorry. Let's go ahead and look at the wonderful way in which you are right, and you just continue to be right. Fuchsia. Fuchsia is a very exciting one. Fuchsia, I think it's like magenta-y, but I don't know it. Where's fuchsia's? Oh, that's unexpected. This is telling me that fuchsia, you know what? That makes a lot of sense, isn't it? Maximum red, no green, and maximum blue. Okay, that's kind of magenta-y. And if you there's a lot of color pickers on the web. If you search for hex code color picker, you don't have to memorize all of these. Just to give you a little bit of a barometer, I have memorized none of these. Even if it's something really basic like red, I will have to look at it and say, the first 2 digits are red. FF. There's no way you can be worse than this at me. And they let me work in tech. Cyan, that's so beautiful. Cyan says, please don't give me any red. I don't need any of that, but I'd like maximum blue and I'd like maximum green as well. Nice. And then green. I'm going to make one of you yell at me about what green is because I bet money that we can all do this together. If I want this to be green, please don't give me, oh heck, please don't press shift. Please don't give me any red. Please give me all of the green. And please don't give me a bit of blue. Awesome. This is so weird, right? What if there was a way to write colors that gave you the exact same number of options, but was different just to be confusing and just to give you different options? Would you be excited about that? Would you be really excited if there was hex codes and then an equal way to make just the same amount of colors that had a completely different format just because? Would y'all be really hyped about that? Because there's another way to write colors. Yeah, let's make this more confusing. We've just learned about red, red, green, green, blue, blue as a way to write it in hex. And we should go ahead and specify that that's hex. And then we've learned about the abbreviated way to say red, green, blue. And now we're going to learn about a much more, well, much, not more confusing. We're going to learn about a way to say the same thing in a different format. Go ahead and make these an H1 just to make them super big so y'all can see. Ah, this is terrible HTML. Don't write HTML like me. Look at this. I've just got lines everywhere. Close my H1 just to keep it. So the long hex codes, we've learned about these 6 digits, which are red, red, green, green, blue, blue. We learned about the abbreviated, the chill way. Say, hey, I don't need all those options. Just go ahead and give me this much red, this much green, and this much blue. And now we're going to use the exact same number of options, except our ranges run for, instead of using 0 to 9 and then A to F, RGB is going to say, hey, this way when we write colors, 0 is still give me none of this color. And 255 is give me the max. Yeah. That gives us, so 2 digits for one color equals 6 times 16, which gives us 256 total values. I'm going to cheat. Why do you think? Oh, thank you very much. Why do you think, and if anybody knows this, please yell at me because this is really exciting. Why do we have 265 options? And this is weird. Why 265? Because here, 0 counts as an option. What is it about computers where 256 is a special number? And there's no, like, cheating does not exist. You can look this up. You're like, oh, hey, DuckDuckGo, why is 256 a special number? And yeah, do it. The first person who gets this right wins absolutely nothing except for praise from your peers. So if you want 0 red, 0 green, and 0 blue, you'd get black. If you wanted white, it would be all of the red, all of the green, and all of the blue. Perfect. Linda, a bit is 256 bytes. So this is about the amount of storage, the amount of memory it takes to communicate this concept. And a byte is the sort of how much information it takes for one character. So each of these characters. Linda, you are always a joy to have in this class. Oh gosh, that is not to imply at all that the rest of you aren't absolutely loved and appreciated. I am picking favorites. I'm so mean. So We're going to change the body background to orange using its RGB code. Yeah. If we did that, it would be give me all of the red, a little more than half of the green, and no blue. I'm having a hard time mentally parsing how green and red is orange, but that's what computers insist on, and I believe them. Here, we're going to turn the background to black. RGB is the format. Then we get our smooth braces. I say, please don't give me any red. I don't need any green at all, thank you. And also, I'm not going to need any blue. Bye. You're not working. Does that make it not? Oh, gosh. Oh, that's space. Ooh, I've just learned that. You cannot have a space before it. Hmm. And this is going to feel, let's go ahead and do another one to see if it feels a little bit less weird. And I got asked in the last class, which was so useful. They say, hey, are there rules about when we use hex and when we use RGB? And I said, no, they're just different ways to say the exact same thing. If you're on a project where there's lots of different people working on it, you should use what people on that project have decided they're going to use. That's okay. If you're working on your own project, you should use what's in your heart. And not that I think you have hex codes in your heart, but like you should use the one that feels the least weird. Yeah. So let's come in and let's just get a little bit of a feel for RGB. Say red, green, blue. There's smooth braces. And here we're going to make this blue. So I don't want any red. I don't want any green. And I want maximum blue, 255. That works. That feels chill. And for red, let's do the exact same thing. I said, well, red, green, blue. Please give me the maximum red. I don't want any green. And I don't want any blue. And here we're going to mix them. Orchid, which just sounds beautiful, doesn't it? We're going to say red, green, blue. And here we're going to say, well, give me 218. Sorry, 218 red. Okay. And give me 112 green. Say, all right. And give me 214 blue. And that gives us this very, very beautiful sort of calm purpley pink. And sienna. I think this is going to be a brown kind of deal, don't you? Red, green, blue. From here, we're going to say, give me 160 red, like a decent amount of red. Give me 82 green, just, medium, small amount. 40, not much blue at all. Yeah. And we can just mix this right up. I know that this feels super weird. And let's make this weirder. Who wants to torture a penguin? I mean, not torture. We love this penguin. This penguin trusts us. We're not good. No penguins will be harmed during this course. Yeah, we're not going to hurt the baby. We're going to learn about variables in CSS. And I was having a really hard time yesterday describing what the concept of a variable is. And one of our attendees yesterday said, "Oh, hey, a variable is when you have a labeled box, and then you put things in that box, and then you could use everything in that box just by using the name of the box." Weird, right? Let's do it together. So we're going to learn about CSS variables, but variables are going to continue to come up in most computer programming languages. So if you move on to study JavaScript, yeah, and then being able to say, hey, variables are going to come back in JavaScript. I'm glad I learned about them in CSS. And here, when I said creating a variable is like making a box, these are going to be some creepy boxes. So I'm telling CSS, I'd like to create a variable. I want a box. CSS says, okay. What's your box called? What's your variable called? I say, I want to have a box called penguin skin. And CSS says, Yeah, sure. I'm not a person. A person would think a box called penguin skin is weird, but I'm just CSS. I'm cool. And in CSS, you start a variable with these two dashes. Yeah. So we're going to take a look at what this does. Yep, Hi from London is saying a byte is 8 bits. Where does 265 come from? I'll go ahead and we'll get that to you in just a second. Multitasking poorly. So, where's my favorite link for this? Yeah, here we go. So it has 8 bytes. So those 8 bits can have 256 different combinations. So you can make 256 different, unique, and beautiful things out of those 8 bytes. And that seems weird, right? But I have 8 bits, and with those 8 bits, I have 216 possible magic codes or unique codes. I went ahead and dropped the Wikipedia in there for you. Here, you love how I just search where I'm like, oh gosh, I remember seeing this. I have to look it up myself. Here we've got our variables already made. And we're going to change these variables just to see what they do. So we're going to change what's inside our labeled boxes. And I'm going to take you on a journey. Here it says set the background to the variable penguin skin. So instead of saying the color, we're saying, hey, use the contents of the box penguin skin to decide what the color is going to be. And to be especially cruel, we're not going to finish all of these today. We didn't finish with the class yesterday. What we're going to do is we're going to leave you the last couple for yourself to puzzle through just because it's good for you to struggle. Well, struggle. I don't want you to struggle. It's good to puzzle some of these out on your own. And because I'm mean. Oh, Jonathan is asking a really good question. So, one thing I was going to say is when you look at the CSS for this lesson, don't freak out if you don't understand everything that's going on. This is a lot. I would have to and ha to totally get it. But Jonathan is previewing something, and Jonathan, you're absolutely right. But let us catch up. Let us catch up. Look at y'all being right all the time, wearing me out. So here we're going to change the context of this box to gray. I'm so sorry. We're not going to finish the whole thing. And I get that this feels confusing. It's going to keep feeling confusing. Um, and it'll just feel easier the more you touch it. And I'm so sorry if that seems mean. Computers were a mistake. And so changing the penguin beak also changes the feet. I think that maybe our CSS code for feet, penguin top, penguin bottom, look at these very, very human readable variables. Right hand, right cheek, left cheek, belly, or a little penguin belly. And the right feet, look at that. The color, the background color of the right foot is set to the variable penguin beak. So what lives inside of the penguin beak? Cool, cool, cool. We're going to run the tests and we're going to continue through these a little bit. And one thing I really want to flag is this whole penguin is just written in CSS. Isn't this weird and cool? There's people on CodePen and there's people on Code Sandbox who who build beautiful art all out of this. Here we've and you say, Jess, what's happened? How have you broken our penguin? How'd you break our penguin? So the reason I broke your penguin is because I don't have semicolon. I haven't finished what I'm writing here. CSS doesn't know what I'm doing. All it knows is that there's no semicolon before position relative. So it broke that line of CSS that had been keeping our position relative. Once I add the semicolon here, I can finish my thought. Oh, we've got some folks saying that they're taking a lot of time on the variables. That's super normal. I'm so sorry. It like the first couple of times you touch these, they're going to be super slow. I'm so sorry, but it feels bad, but it's okay to feel bad. That's very upsetting, isn't it, Jess? Ooh, I'm okay with y'all being a little miserable. We're gonna set the value here to gray. Why didn't that work? What didn't work? I've said the penguin skin should be gray. Fabio, this sort of sounds like terrible advice, but it's also kind of legit. So a lot of these things, and that's not how like that's the opposite of what any teacher wants. Like, oh, we know, just go along with it. It'll make sense later. I hate that I'm saying this so much. And it's not, oh, don't worry about it, or oh, we'll abstract this away. Ha ha ha. You don't need to worry. Just like, okay, let's get the feel for the syntax. Let's understand what a variable might feel like conceptually. Let's look. It starts with two dashes and then slowly sort of smash our heads against the understanding. Catherine makes a really good point. CSS variables doesn't feel very natural. This doesn't feel like what we've been doing. We've been saying, here's a rule. Whoop, here's a rule. Make a club for it or apply it here. And here we're saying, I want to make a box. I want to make an abstraction which contains these values. And then I want to apply the idea of this box, the contents of the values in different places. And like, what? Jonathan, this is a very good question. You know exactly what I'm going to tell you to do. Are you going to look it up and come right back and tell us? I'm mean. I'm just mean all the time. In the penguin class, create a variable named penguin skin and give it the value of gray. We did that. I'm not trying to discourage you all from asking good questions. I just want to make sure that we can both learn about, oh, does HTML have variables? What would they look like? Is a really valid question. But I also want to go ahead and make sure we're covering this really well. Kui makes a really good point. Hey, you know what? These variables are useful for reusability. And this is beautiful. So here's how we set something to the value of the variable. So, and look how much it loves us. Here I'm saying, hey, I don't want this to be black. Oh no, my poor penguin. I want the background color to be set to the variable. And they always start with two dashes. Penguin skin. And here I'm saying, cool. When you see, when you want the background, when you want to know what color this should be, go and look in the box labeled penguin skin and get whatever's in that box. And what's in that box is the color gray. You say, Jess, that's so weird. And I say, I know, isn't it weird? Let's keep doing it until it feels a little bit less weird. Well, here the background is set to black. So the CSS comes and says, hi, I see that you're drawing a class called Penguin Bottom, and I see that you've set it to black. And I say, well, you know what? I don't want it to be black anymore. Please go and get the variable. Please go and find the box. Name penguin skin and set. Please, oh, penguin, right? Please go and find so when you're drawing the bottom of this penguin, when you come to set the background color, go find the box, the variable called penguin skin, and get the value, get the color out of that box. Yep. So there's a var tag, but HTML isn't, it's not, it's not variable friendly. You can't, and I imagine there's probably some deeply complex, weird things you can do with it. But I think not variables the way we would think of variables in CSS or even in JavaScript apply very easily or very happily to HTML. Jonathan, you're a gift and you're so patient for me just saying, oh, well, the dictionary's in the corner of the room. Can I ask you to look it up? You are an absolute doll. So here we've said, please make the background black. But again, I say, well, when you go and set it, please go, here's var. So go find the box, go find the variable that's called penguin skin and set it to that. And let's do the one last one. Right now you're black, but we want to use the box labeled penguin skin. A little bit tiring, but our penguin is gray now. You say, well, what was the value of that, Jess? Why have you used variables instead of just saying gray 4 times? That seems like more typing than saying gray. Well, say, yeah, but what if I want to get weird? What if I say, well, my penguin is pink? It means I can go ahead and change every time this variable is referenced, all at the same. Oh, I like it better pink. I bet it's going to ask us for it to be gray to pass this. And you can do whatever you want to your penguin. You can make it pink. You can draw bubbles in the background. You can do what's in your heart. Let's keep going a little bit. Jonathan asked this a minute ago, and I really appreciated it. It was such a good question. Said, hey, what about a fallback? So we learned about fallbacks when we learned about fonts, didn't we? When we said, hey, please use this Google font called Lobster. And then we added a fallback. So, and then a comma, and then, well, if you can't find Lobster, please use monospace. And we're going to use the exact same thing here. Not because we think it won't be able to go and get this variable, because some older browsers don't do CSS variables. And this is part of a larger concept called browser compatibility. And to talk about browser compatibility, I'm going to lovingly and kindly ask the class, what browser are you using to watch this lesson? Or what browser do you use to access Free Code Camp? So that's, what program do you open up on your computer or on your phone or on your Xbox? Our Xbox is still a thing. I'm very old. So what do you use to watch? What are you using right now? What's the browser that you're using to access this? And for real, just yell it at me. We've got some folks on Chrome. We've got Chrome and Firefox. Yeah, a lot of Chrome users. Oof, the browser wars. We knew someone was going to win. So we've got a whole bunch of these. So not all browsers do all things. If you remember from last week, we had Miguel come and talk to us about dev tools. And one of the exciting things he talked about was the concept of a developer browser that you can use. And with a developer browser, usually in the future, you've got 3 or 4 months of future features. You say, wow, I'm going to use this new feature. But part of testing is understanding, oh, you know what? All of my users may not have the features of the browser I'm using. I need to test in different browsers. And one thing is Internet Explorer, and Internet Explorer is an older browser. It's not supported anymore. If you're using it, you should probably try and upgrade to something else. Firefox, or Chrome, or Brave, or whatever suits you, or Vivaldi. Vivaldi's very popular now. Whatever suits you best. Yeah, let's go ahead and do this. Oh gosh, and the session we've got tomorrow, so we're going to have a guest session tomorrow. And the one we've got tomorrow is we're going to be talking to some graduates from different boot camps, and they're going to be talking to us about our experience. That's up on the events page. You can sign up. And we've got 3 different people who are going to chat to us. do you know what? They are just going to hang out and you all are going to, I mean, not yell. You all are very gentle and very sweet. Y'all are going to come and ask them whatever polite questions you want about what it's like coming out of a boot camp, what it's like looking for work, those kinds of things. So here's how we set, we're just bouncing around. Here's how we set a backup, a fallback value for our CSS variable. Here we say set the background to the variable, the box called penguin skin. But then if you can't use it, use the color black. So here we've got set the background to the variable penguin skin. And we're just going to add that fallback and say, hey, if you don't have it, please just set it to black. So let's go ahead and add this fallback to all of these. If you don't have penguin skin, just make it black. Yeah, is that enough? That's enough. Everything's fine. So we could also do browser fallbacks. And we just talked about this a little bit. Browser compatibility. And we'll go ahead and we'll be having somebody from the W3C, I believe, is going to be joining us way later in the course to talk to us a little bit about browser compatibility and how standards are made. But we just talked about this and said, hey, not all of your users are going to be on the same browser. Not all the people visiting your website will have access to the same features. So it's pretty important to test your website in different browsers. It's the nice thing to do. Fabio's asking, can we use variables to other values too? I'm not sure what that question means. Can you give it to me? Can you say that in another way? Sorry, I'm rubbish. I'm not sorry. My gentle apologies for having no idea what that question is supposed to be, which is, oh, like font size. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, this question's great. Oh, ignore where I said, yeah, yeah. No, you should totally look it up. But I feel confident saying, yeah, yeah. Remember that a variable is just a labeled box with values inside it. It doesn't have to just be color. It can be font. It can be padding. It can be margins. You put whatever you want in that box. Get weird. I mean, not everything will work and not everything will make sense. But when we don't know something, the two things we do are the three things we get. On the stream, you can ask, you can look it up. And sometimes when you ask, I'll tell you to look it up because I'm mean. Or you can get weird and experiment. And sometimes I'll tell you to get weird. But like here, you've got all the answers. I said, yes, you can put other values than color in your variables, but also I want to look it up and read a little bit. But most importantly, get weird. Get weird with variables. Do weird stuff. Here, we're going to create a backup. So we've got the red box class, but here we see we've set it to a variable. And we've just learned that Internet Explorer doesn't use CSS variables. So we're just going to give them a backup. So say, hey, if you're using Internet Explorer here and you come here, just in case you don't see that red box, I'm going to give you a backup red box. Oh, what are we doing? What? Your red box rules should include a fallback with the background set to, oh yes, of course. Oh gosh, no, this works in a completely different way. You see me being smug. That's what you get for being smug. Okay, so I'm going to ask the adults in this room, who again are not me, why does this work? We have two different backgrounds set here. What's the deal? And this is going to feel a lot like when we had two classes with conflicting rules, but here, both of the rules agree with each other. And really the intention here is to come through and say, hey, browser, come and read our CSS for the rules. And if you've got an old browser, make the background red. I say, yeah. But if you've got a newer browser and you recognize what a CSS variable is, you're then immediately going to switch to the next thing I've said. You said, well, you told me up here to make it red, but then you also set the background to this. I'm going to go with the most recent thing you've said. I'm going to use this variable. Whereas we, but y'all are web developers. Web developers are I hope adults. Oh, I hope y'all aren't 9. I've come very close to swearing on this a lot. So here we say the background is red, and here we say, hey, this is the second thing. This is the one we really want you to take. But if you don't recognize that this is a variable, we've got a backup for you. You've already turned it red. You're fine. It's chill. Well, let's go on to the next challenge and let's just look at it. Because we're going to look at another weird concept. Look at this root. You say, what? What? Jess, I don't know what root is. And it's this weird format, like classes have a full stop, and then IDs have a hash, and then like the type selectors have the little square babies. But what's root? I say, I got you. Root is a pseudo class. It's a fake class. It's a special class, and it's really only used to say root, and it's used to mean the top, the most parent element, the outermost element, which usually means HTML. Let's come and look at this again. So this is our HTML file, yeah? And this is very abbreviated. You'd have a lot more. And here we're saying, so the doc type to HTML. And that's sort of its own thing. It just sort of sits over there. It chills. And our most parental element, our top level element. You can't get outside this element. When you try and go outside this element, there's nothing except for doc type, is HTML. When we use the pseudo class root, we're saying, hey, I want to set this rule for the top level element. I want the ultimate authority. I want to talk to your mother. And HTML is the most parental element. All of the other element are children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren of HTML. And what root is saying is, hey, here's a special, weird, fake class that references. Ooh. Kai points out that you've seen hover as a pseudo class as well. It's really exciting. Ooh. And Kuya's saying that you can set the font size and root for Remy. Ooh. Yeah, of course. You're an absolute joy to have in this class. I really appreciate you. So, we learned about inheritance, and we can inherit variables. We got this. So, if we put a variable inside of root, it means that the rules are going to be accessible anywhere else. I'm going to create a penguin belly variable. Oh, how do I do variables? Is it like this? Oh no. We just did this. I mean, come on. Is it? Oh, that's not good. How we doing? Oh no. In swirly braces. Oh. Huh. What happened here? What's the deal here? Oh no, don't cry. The penguin's fine. The penguin likes it pink. Everything's fine. We didn't actually stretch the penguin's belly all over the place. It's just that the penguin's belly is pink. And the sky is also the color of the value of penguin belly. Everything's fine, my love. So what's happened is we've said, hey, penguin belly is pink. And then we see the value is being inherited by all of the other child elements. So Matt was saying, hey, we could have said HTML, and we could go ahead and do that. Say, how does that work? How does that feel? That does the same thing. And root is just a little bit more flexible, just in case. So we've got somebody asking, oh, would we put most of the variables inside the root pseudo class? You'd only put stuff inside of root when you want it to be inherited by everything else. So if you want it to be inherited, throw it way up. I am going to be mean. Is there a good reason for not oh, yes. I'm going to regret going down this road. So the scope of a variable is something that's going to be really, really important throughout computer science and throughout programming, and not just as as a field of program, but no, for you as a programmer and a web developer. The level, the scope that you define variables at means that, so if you want a variable to not be accessible in other elements, you'd probably put it in a child element or put it in a specific place. If you wanted it to be globally accessible, that's what root's for. Root is sort of your global variables. And I'm sort of glossing over this a little bit because this is a big, weird, chunky question, which is every time you define a variable, they say, hey, I've got this variable. One of the questions that, and you may not be consciously turning it over in your head, it may be something where as you become more experienced, you say, oh, it feels like it goes here. And a lot of that is, oh, we've got Fabio saying, if you've got a big project and you want to keep some of them restricted. Yeah. So, oh, you know what? There's multiple penguins in here. And I've got different variables for penguin belly, depending on where in the project they sit. Or maybe I've got a big project where some of my variables, probably not in CSS, but maybe some of my variables are sensitive. Maybe they shouldn't be seen by other folks or shouldn't be seen by other parts of the program. So the reason you would put a variable outside of root is if you wanted to either make sure it's not inherited for CSS or more computer sciencely, it's not a word. There are a lot of reasons around scope and variables that we'll be learning about as we start to touch on JavaScript. I know that's not really satisfying. Um, Fabulous. I'm going to be super mean. Well, I'm always mean to y'all. And I'm going to make you do the last couple of them on your own. And that's not to be especially cruel, but that's because I think going it, and it's just these last two. And just is doing a lot of lifting there. It's a hard just. Those last two, they're gonna suck. Sorry, they're gonna be challenging. There we are. But it's really important to sort of puzzle through this. For your homeworks, if you don't mind, my lovelies, please do the last couple of these CSSs. CSSs? That's not how we. And then I'd love for you to go ahead and start on the applied visual design. If you've got the time and if you've got the energy, doing 50, doing 25 of these, come on, Jazz. Doing 50% of this will keep you on track with the course, but there's lots of time to catch up. These sound super scary, applied visual design, but these are really just, oh, hey, we're going to be using our HTML and CSS together to do some weird stuff. It's scary, but it's not going to hurt you. And if it does hurt you, it's only going to hurt for a minute. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I'd love to answer any questions that I can for you all. It can be about what we've learned today. I'm not going to go over the last two. I'm so sorry to be so mean. We can talk about concepts from the last two problems, or we can just chat about whatever it is that makes y'all happiest. So if you've got a question like this, Catherine is just fantastic. Oh, wow. I'm picking on Catherine, but I pick on all of you. You all just ask the best questions, and it's so intimidating and it's so humbling, and I love it. But if you can think of any questions at all that I can answer for you, I will be very excited to help. Aw, studying with you all makes me happy as well. You all are so absolutely lovely. But everything's going to be easy, everything's going to be chill. And if it looks like we don't have any questions, I might go and take a very, very lazy nap. We're going to be starting right around this time tomorrow. HTML is also global. Linda, could you ask this in a slightly different way? I think I get what you're getting at, but I don't want to answer a question that's silly for you. Oh gosh, I'm not trying to suggest that your question's silly. I want to make sure I'm actually answering what you're doing. Yeah. And please don't forget. Woof. These lights are absolutely destroying me. Please don't forget that we're always on the forum and really happy to answer your questions. And folks are just looking out for you. Yeah. Yeah. So to recap, so Match show that tomorrow there will also be a live stream. The events, where's that banner button? You know what, as lazy as I am. Oh gosh, if anybody wants to say hello, I keep saying my beautiful assistant, and he's not even my assistant. That's very rude. My beautiful colleague, Mervin, has been the one helping out on the stream today. So saying, hey, Mervin, and absolutely cooing over how much we adore Mervin is also probably going to serve us well. So tomorrow there's going to be a live stream in the exact same places, and it'll start a little bit after this time. Oh, so Hi from London is asking, hey, how would I set a variable to target a belly, for instance? So, you, I'm going to have you. Do you know what? There's three different things you can do. You can ask me, you could look it up, or you could get weird. And this is one where I'm going to ask you to get weird. So, looking at the CSS for a penguin, I don't at a glance understand all of it, but try and work out what's going on here. Um, and try and see, where can I put a variable for the penguin belly? Or if you're looking at these last three ones, which variable already targets the penguin's belly? In our last lesson, it targeted the penguin's belly and background, everything else that wasn't more specifically set and overridden, because it was a global variable, because we said, hey, turn everything in root pink. Turn everything in root, the value of penguin belly. If you just wanted to do penguin belly, you wouldn't put it in root, so it wouldn't impact inheritance. Oh, Fabio is so we've got a question saying, "Oh, are we going to learn to animate to make the penguin raving?" I told somebody no yesterday, and I lied. Fabio saying, "Oh yes, we're totally going to do that." I've got to go back and apologize to them. I am. I'll apologize to that class on Monday. I completely forgot that we do a bit of animation in here. So Linda's asking, oh, do you know what? If I set a variable in root, it's sort of global. It's inherited by everything. And if I use HTML in place of that, will it have the same effect? Absolutely, yeah. So HTML is the big parent element, the most parental element. So if you set something like a background color for that in HTML instead of root, it's still going to impact everything else unless it's overridden. Yeah. So yes, unless something more specific conflicts with it. I feel like me using the phrase global variable was really unfair on y'all. So that's really a concept that we'll talk about in JavaScript. And I wanted to preview, oh, cool, the idea of something being available everywhere, available globally versus locally is something I wanted to preview. And now that I've done that, I confess that that just makes it much more confusing when we're talking specifically about CSS. So Don't worry too much about the idea of global variables yet. We'll make you unhappy with that if we can get to JavaScript. And yeah, I look forward to being unhappy with you. I'm never unhappy with you all. Um, I'm so sorry to have made everything needlessly complex. What if, having made your day more difficult, I say goodbye and let you have very easy mornings, very easy afternoons? Kai's learning about global variables in C++, and what? That is hard, hard work. Woof. C++ is hard. You are obviously a genius. I respect your significantly more dramatic, more powerful computer science skills. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and let you all go. I massively appreciate you making time to learn with us. Please have a really easy morning or afternoon, or hopefully not the middle of the night for you. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you tomorrow for the panel. Bye, all.